Hey there, we're back with Season 3, Episode 2 of We're Just Talking About It. We continue our conversation with Angie Gad. She's a Muslim woman currently teaching counterterrorism in North Carolina. But we go back to her former job as an analyst for Homeland Security, where every day she studied ISIS propaganda. It was this job that led her to start her own project called the MyIslam Project. We hope you enjoy this episode. And about along the lines of exposure, though, I had a question for you more when we were going to get into the MyIslam Project. But we've had this conversation about, we're having this conversation, but how do you get it in front of the right audience or quote unquote the people who need to hear this information? How do we get that in front of them, or how do you get the MyIslam Project in front of people?
I'm trying to figure that out. I mean, I think that's why I reached out to Jason.
Right.
I think my husband saw you on TV, and then he sent me your tweet, and he was like, Angie, you gotta check this guy out. And I reached out to him, and I realized that you guys are doing the same thing I'm trying to do. And I was like, we need to get together. And I was really excited because I don't think it's very rare to see people doing this, and it's even more rare to find people who are not Muslim doing this, right? And I was so excited when I saw kind of what you guys are working on. I don't know how to, that's what I'm trying to figure out, right? I created my project, and I'm putting out these articles as much as I can. And I'm trying to reach whoever it can reach. And I guess I'll kind of talk about it now, right?
Go ahead.
So in my, as an analyst with Homeland Security, my main group was ISIS. And my domestic group, right, they set it up so that each analyst had an international terrorist group and a domestic. So I had the anti-government extremist groups here, the militia groups, the guys that took over the Oregon standoff a couple years ago, right? And a lot of my job was to kind of read tons of ISIS propaganda all the time. And on a personal level, I would realize how frustrated and upset I would be reading their propaganda every day. Because, right, Dabiq and Rumayya are very, very dense magazines that ISIS would put out. And very heavy theologically. And they would quote tons of stuff in there. They just kind of wax poetic about certain things. And it was, I remember reading it, and that's how they would justify, for instance, burning the Jordanian pilot, even though in Islam, burning is reserved for God on the Day of Judgment, for instance, right? But they would go on and on, justifying their actions. Yep. Which what every terrorist organization, Salafi jihadist groups are doing. They will cherry pick things from the Quran.
And what every white supremacist group does.
Oh, correct. It's the same thing.
I mean, this is the model. I need to find something that justifies what I'm doing and really makes me feel like I can do it.
Exactly.
Now, don't tell me anything else, because I don't want you to ruin my logic.
Right. Exactly. It'll crumble. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I started getting. I was reading this book. It's called The Great Theft. It's by Khalid Abul Fadl, and he wrote this book. He's I believe last time I checked, he teaches at UCLA, and he mentioned in the book how, and this was really the catalyst behind the MyIslam Project. I remember reading the book, and it was saying there is a ton of jihadist propaganda out there on the internet, and there is not enough content to counter that. They are very good at putting out tons of content. It's very dense. They just kind of push it out. But there's, on the moderate side, of the people who are not extremists, which is the overwhelming majority of Muslims. No one is really doing as much as the jihadists are doing, even though they're a very, very small portion or population from the broader Muslim community. And that kind of clicked, and it's like you need people who really know the religion to be able to counter them. Now, again, I'm not a scholar by any means, but it kind of came together for me. I'm already studying these terrorist groups. This is my job, and I'm reading their propaganda every day. Why not extract what they're taking from their propaganda and use the same tools? That's MyIslam. I distilled it. I made it very simple. I'm using the same tools the terrorists are using, but I'm using it against them. Yep. So the Quran, the Hadith, and the internet. That's really all the three things that they use. I don't have as much clout as they do, right? We're following. Nor do I wish to convert or anyone. What I'm trying to do is, for instance, the MyIslam Project, I keep it simple, one-pagers, just like I was trained in the intel community to write a one-page intelligence product. I make it simple, digestible for people, and I will take an issue like jihad or apostasy. That's the one I'm working on right now, is apostasy in Islam, and how they have taken verses out of context and put it back into context, right?
Yeah.
I will see whatever Quran or Hadith, Quranic verse or Hadith they use to justify it. I take that same verse, and then I'll tell you the historical context, how the extremists interpret it, what the historical context behind that verse being released is, and then I'll give you the subsequent verse and the preceding verse to show the full picture, and then I break it down. And I've gotten a lot of people, at least within my community, within the Muslim community, people outside of my community have seen it. I'm still working on expanding my readership base and getting that out there to more people, but basically I'm trying to make it a website for people to go to if they have a simple question. I'm not trying to get too deep in the weeds theologically, because again, I'm looking at it as if my readership base is someone who's, I just want to understand, what does Islam say about jihad? Am I understanding jihad right? Is it actually as the extremists are making it out to be, or is this something that's completely put out of context? What it is, and then make it like a one-stop shop for people to go to.
Right. It's like a true or false. I mean, you're looking at two statements and saying which one is true and which one is false, or here's the one with a little bit more information. And I feel like we talk about this, but that kind of stuff should have been happening from day one, or on the news we should have been hearing, here's what the terrorists are saying, but here's the truth, or here's what the context is. And that never happened. And that's why I feel like people come up and say, like, oh yeah, you're not that bad, because all they see is the TV and what the news says about Muslims and Islam.
Right.
Yeah, that is definitely the problem. It's the problem that I've faced. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I've been doing this for coming up on 4 years now. This is our 1 year anniversary on our coming up on our podcast. But I've been out wandering around the country, and I talk to anybody who'll want to listen to me, and I use a lot of the same techniques. But when I reach out to the media, and I wrote an op-ed that the media won't publish right now. I've farmed it out to 2 different places so far, to basically say we're not solving anything in America.
Right.
We know what the problems are. It's intolerance, and people will use whatever they want to justify it. Any religion, any crazy ideology, whatever they want, they'll justify their intolerance. But how do we get to the solutions?
Right. Which
is countering intolerance, which is facts, is discussions.
Yep.
And I beat up my friends in the media that I've known for a long time. It's since 2002 when I started in Afghanistan. I met a ton of folks, and I beat them up all the time. I'm like, you've got to let people come on that are giving solutions. You just bring on 2 people on 2 extremes and let them yell. It doesn't help the American citizen to understand anything.
Right, but would it be entertaining, right?
Exactly, and that's
Why are we watching?
They
not
are
to be educated,
honest
to be
about that.
entertained.
They're like, look, I told my producers. They said it won't sell ads. We're not doing it.
Right.
We're here to make money. It doesn't matter if the American people need education. We're not giving it to them.
Right.
They don't see that as their job in the press, and it's so frustrating. Because you've got great folks like you out here doing this. Free resource, really, to anybody in the press who wants to have a discussion.
I'm not trying to monetize it.
It's
just a
Here's
free
information.
Resource. Right.
Yeah.
Ask Holly. There's no money in this.
Right. No, absolutely not.
She's joined my movement here. There's no money in this.
No, I mean, I'm spending money on the website, right? But
exactly. I spend money on lots of stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's the frustration. When I talk to groups of Americans, whether it's 5 people or 250, they will tell me, and I do a lot of Q&A because I'm not going to just talk to them. That's the number one thing they tell me. Why aren't we seeing this in the press? Why isn't anybody just having these simple conversations and using facts and using context to help us understand? I don't get it.
Right.
They're just as frustrated the American citizen is. So I think we've got to find a way to do that. Maybe there's some way to motivate interfaith groups, although that can be challenging as well, because they get so focused talking inward, they never talk outside of their interfaith group, or they start getting political, which we push away from on what we're doing, because that ruins everything. It's a challenge, very frustrating. I sense the frustration when you first reached out to me, and
and I think so. The issue is just kind of a website. It depends on how the articles are reaching people, for instance. But for myself, what I try to do is represent my community the best way I possibly can, because I am a walking representation of my religion. So anytime I try to do, anyone who wants to talk about Islam, or they don't, I force them on them, right? Exactly. I start talking about it because I want to expose them to it. I think my friends are so sick of me talking about it, but I think I need to tone it down. But they kind of get the gist, right? We're cool. But other people, for instance, I'll try to bring it up, but not in a way that's proselytizing. I'm not trying to convert anyone. I'm just trying to get them to understand. But there aren't that many of us to do that. And for some people, that's just not their their drive, right? That's not what they have, a job, or they have some other things that responsibilities they have to do. Other Muslim Americans, for instance, but it's hard. You're right. It's hard to get that exposure in the media, the positive exposure, because it's very sad to me that people have said this, maybe not knowing that it's offensive. Like, how come you're not wearing a tent, right? Or how come you're not covered up? And I think it's because it's the only thing that they're exposed to, or what they see. Yeah. And they go, you're a Muslim woman, you've probably been oppressed your whole life. I was like, well, actually, no, right? I haven't, right? And I came from a conservative household, but we've also been, however you want to define moderate. We're not strict in a sense of kind of the Salafist element of kind of following Islam, right? So people are so shocked, and I don't like that shock factor where they're so shocked that I'm American, which again, it's hard for people to reconcile the two things, right? Yeah. Being American and a Muslim, and that's something that I've had to navigate my whole life, and it's very hard to kind of do, but I've also explained to them how we American Muslims find that balance. But
when I always talk about that when I talk to different groups. Look, there's no one Muslim.
Right.
There's no one Muslim American. There's no one Baptist or one Baptist American. Right. If you go to anybody's house and you see the way they're raising their kids and the way that how they care about education, what they think about work, and what they think about dating, and who you have to marry, like everybody, it's always unique.
Right.
There's so many different cultures, and we just want to lump everything together.
Right.
I could see the frustration there. It's like, oh, you're so American.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, everybody's American,
right. And they're just going based off stereotypes, like you said, that they've heard. If they've never met a Muslim, because the population and what are the chances, like we talked about, they're just going based off what someone else has told them. And
every movie, every TV show, every book they've ever read, every news clip that they see, the majority of it is negative.
Right.
What else are you going to think?
Right.
Until you meet somebody and you have that exposure and you go, oh, you're not that bad.
Right.
I mean, it sounds silly, but that's where we are. I grew up in the Deep South. I mean, there were lots of white supremacists where I grew up, and and I watched them over the years because I came from New England into that situation, and I was like, well, this is wild.
Right.
But I watched them over the years as they were exposed to different cultures, completely change. And it shift, and now they're proselytizing the other way. They're like, oh no, that's ridiculous. But that's the house they grew up in, and that's what they were taught until they saw otherwise.
More exposed to the other.
Yeah,
right.
The others.
Right.
That everybody has to find in their life.
Right.
What is it like, or has it been like, being a Muslim American in the counterterrorism realm?
Right. So there's not a lot that I've been. I mean, I was in most circles. I was typically the only one. Again, but I was at a state level agency. I worked with some federal agencies as well. It was mostly just me. In my agency, I was the only Muslim Arab American. There was another male Muslim detective who was he wasn't Arab. He was Pakistani, and it kind of was just us. But I was the only analyst, and it was not. I think I had my own notions going in, but everyone disproved that. Everyone was absolutely amazing. We were a very, very diverse team. And I was very fortunate, and even when I encountered people from the private sector or from other public sector, our partner agencies, I've never had an issue. And if anything, people would, once they found out, they would come to me with questions, and I was very happy about that.
So I was going to ask you how being a Muslim almost not worked to your advantage, or how did that benefit you in that role?
Well, being a Muslim helped me because I knew all the terms and the language that the terrorist and extremist groups are using. People can learn that, though. And I think my boss was very, very good at making sure that I was not the token Muslim at the agency. He did a very, very good job at making sure that my first few years, I established my credibility as an analyst first. And then, because I was not a translator, I wasn't there to translate Arabic to English or vice versa. I was there as an analyst, and once I got that credibility, if someone had a request for me to look at something or translate something or whatever, something outside of my regular responsibilities, he would ask me if I was okay with that first, and then I would decide, and I typically always helped out. I would do everything I can to help out, but he wanted to make sure that I was not that token Muslim. I don't think I knew that going in. I didn't understand that. He knew that better than I did. And he did a very good job of making sure that I was an analyst first, and then second, if someone had a question about faith or culture, they could come to me if I was okay with that. Yeah.
I think that's another piece of this puzzle. I mean, you had stereotypes against the folks you were going to go work with.
Yes.
I went through that same thing working in Afghanistan.
Yes.
I had stereotypes of what it was going to be like in this all-Muslim country, and they had stereotypes of what it was going to be like working, having these Americans around and working with me, but we broke through those instantly.
Right.
Our bosses, like that case, were smart enough to go, no, you're not here to be an ambassador for your country. You're just here to do the job first, get the core work done. Then the extracurricular is you'll learn about things. That's the number one question I always get from people.
Right.
How many times don't they all try to convert you to Islam when you're in these Muslim majority countries? And I laugh. I'm like, the first time I was ever asked to convert to Islam was in America, by a Muslim kid who probably just became Muslim a week ago.
Right.
He was 18 years old and was all excited and trying to convert everybody, just like every other religion. That was it. Like the first time, no one ever brings it up. But I had that stereotype going in, as does everybody that's going to go work in a Muslim majority country. Oh, it's by the time you're gone, you're going to have a Muslim wife, and they're going to have you. Clearly, we're going to have to be converted along the way. But
it doesn't work that way. It's funny you say that because after I kind of got in and started working with the government, I ended up taking on this de facto ambassador role, and I had to kind of fight off some of the stereotypes from my Muslim community about me working for the government, right? So I'm sure you all know many Muslim Americans do not pursue careers in the government. That's something that's more of an outlier. And for me, I had to defend that first to my family, defend that to my community and my friends who, and right, at first it was hard, but a lot of people were like very happy for me, and they liked that I was kind of representing our community in the government. Other people would phrase it, and one of my hardest critics at first was my father. You're working for the enemy, and it's because of this bad blood between the government post 9/11 and the Muslim community. The Muslim community in the United States have used the government with skepticism is because of the profiling and everything that's happened post 9/11. But I kind of have worked while I was at my previous position and today to make sure that the Muslim community knows that things have changed since. The government has gotten better, and I always tell them, in order to make some kind of change, would you rather someone else who's not Muslim representing us? You have to have that person in there to make that change. So if it's not us, then who? If it's not me going out and giving briefs to law enforcement and military personnel about Islam and ISIS, who else will do that? And would you not rather someone from our community represent us? And I think that gets to them, and that kind of gets the point across. So it's interesting to have been on both sides of that stereotype, right? So first kind of on the receiving end, now I'm kind of making sure that people know that it's okay to be a Muslim in the government and still, right, and also have to prove that I'm still loyal and I'm still a Muslim and devout, because they for some reason sometimes will separate the two. You can't, yes, you can be a Muslim, but aren't you what's the word here? You're no longer being loyal to Islam. And I saw someone on Twitter who is a Muslim, I remember tweeted this, and he was like, I genuinely want to understand, how could you be a Muslim and serve in the military and go overseas and kill your brothers and sisters, right? And I remember responding to that from my experience. I'm a civilian, I've never served, but explaining that you have to be that force of good, and sometimes it's very hard for Muslims sometimes to reconcile those two things, and I think it's because of what's happened since 9/11.
And those kind of folks who would ask that question, they're giving the larger Muslim communities a bad rap in the non-Muslim world, because I get that question from the other point of view from my audiences of non-Muslims, to be like, well, how can they, as I have one of my charts is like, tell me what these Muslim Arabic sounding names are these good guys or bad guys? Just one of the things I do, and they're like, oh, they're all bad. I'm like, they're just first names. And by the way, 5 of them work in the U.S. government, and one of them earned the Medal for Valor on the ground. So I use that to kind of make them go, oh, wait a minute, so we have Muslims in the U.S. government? I'm like, yeah, they're part of our society. So yes, we do. But that always comes up. But don't they put their religion before their country? And I think, well, we didn't ask that question when we had to go kill Nazis in World War II
Right.
who claimed to be Christians. No American was going, hey, I don't know if I can go over there and shoot my fellow brother and sister Christians.
Right.
Like, that is odd that people would ask that question. Oh, how could you go over and kill somebody who might be Muslim? Well, if they're a bad guy, it doesn't matter what their religion is. They're evil.
Right.
You have to stand up against evil.
Correct.
That is where we will stop with Angie today, but stick with us. We have one more episode with Angie where we wrap everything up and she talks more about her MyIslam project and how she hopes it will change the conversation here in the United States. As always, thanks for listening. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at We're Just Talking About It, and you can email us at wjtanc@gmail.com.